Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a really interesting piece, the new Eska Heritage Chronograph.
Yeah, this one's got a bit of a story behind it. Eska, maybe not a household name for everyone listening, but it has some serious history.
Definitely. And we've got some good material to work with here, mostly from an article called The Eska Heritage Chronograph, A Timeless Revival. So, our plan is to basically unpack all this, look at the brand's journey, the watch itself, the nitty-gritty details, and figure out what makes it tick, so to speak.
Okay, sounds good. So, Eska. The article makes it clear it's a name that's, well, resurfacing, gaining traction, especially with folks who are into vintage revivals.
Right, and the origins are quite neat. Founded back in, what, 1918?
Yeah, 1918, by Sylvan Kocher. And the name Eska, it's just his initials, SK, spelled out phonetically.
Simple, I like that.
And they were doing well, apparently, through the mid-century, making a name for themselves with Swiss watches.
But then, the familiar story.
The quartz crisis in the 80s hit them hard, like so many others. Eska pretty much vanished for a while.
Classic story. But, thankfully, not the end. The sources say it's been revived.
That's right, under new leadership, Christoph Cheverton and Sinica Nezevich.
And they didn't just jump straight to this chronograph, did they?
No, smart move. They tested the waters first. The article mentions the amphibian 250 dive watch, released in 2024.
Ah, yes, the diver. Black dial first, then white.
Exactly. A modern take on a pretty rare vintage model, the amphibian 600. So they sort of, built some momentum first.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, there's an interesting twist the article brings up about where they're made now. Historically Swiss.
But now assembled in Besançon, France. Yeah, that's a key detail.
It is. Kind of reflects how things are changing, doesn't it? Heritage in one place, assembly maybe somewhere else.
Definitely blurs those traditional lines. It's happening more and more.
Interesting times. Okay, so the amphibians set the stage. Now they're tackling another classic watch type.
And that brings us right to this heritage chronograph.
Which is described as a hand-wound Bi-Compax model.
Yeah. And the idea, the article says, is taking inspiration from an actual old Eska chronograph.
But not a straight copy. More like a reinterpretation.
Exactly. Reimagined with modern specs, modern finishing, trying to capture that old feel, but, build it to today's standards.
Right. Get the look, but also the reliability.
Precisely.
So let's get into those specs. The case first. What does the article tell us?
Okay, case details. It's stainless steel, and the size feels very vintage-inspired.
Like how big?
38 millimeters diameter, which is pretty compact by today's standards for a chrono.
Yeah, definitely. And thickness?
13.9 millimeters, but that includes the domed crystal. And the lug-to-lug is 47 millimeters.
Okay, 38 by 47 sounds like it should wear pretty nicely.
The article also flags some nice vintage touches on the case itself, like the lugs are drilled.
Ah, drilled lugs. Always a fan. Easier strap changes.
And they're angled in a certain way, adds to the retro charm. Plus, you get a mix of finishes, polished, and brushed surfaces.
Just a bit of refinement there.
Right. And then there are these nods to motorsport.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
The crown is knurled and a bit oversized, apparently, and it has those rounded pump pushers.
Pump pushers. Very classic chrono. Takes you right back to that mid-century racing vibe.
Totally. For the crystals, it's sapphire on the front, good for scratch resistance.
And the back.
Mineral glass on the display, caseback, lets you see the movement.
Okay. And water resistant.
Rated at 50 meters, so, fine for everyday stuff, splashes rain, not for swimming.
Makes sense for this style of watch. It's not a diver.
Exactly. So all these little things, the size, the drilled lugs, the pushers, the finishes, they all kind of work together to create that specific vintage chronograph feel they're aiming for.
Now, there was something interesting in the source about how it actually wears, despite the specs.
Yeah.
A bit of nuance.
Yes. This was quite interesting. The article says, on the wrist, the vintage charm is definitely there, thanks to the design, the 38 millimeter size.
Right.
But it also notes that visually, it can look, and I quote, a bit on the thick side.
Really? Even at 13.9 millimeter?
Well, the thinking seems to be that because the diameter is small, the 38 millimeter, the thickness feels sort of amplified visually. Like the proportions make it seem thicker than it might on a, say, 40 or 42 millimeter watch.
Huh. That's a fascinating point about perception, how diameter and thickness interact visually.
It is. It's not just about the raw numbers sometimes.
But does it actually feel thick on the wrist?
That's the key takeaway. The article is very clear. Despite that visual impression, once it's actually on, it wears very nicely.
Okay, good. So the on-wrist feel wins out. That's what matters.
Definitely.
All right, let's move to the dial. This is usually where the vintage character really sings.
For sure. And the article mentions a cool construction here. It's a 2-layer dial, a step dial.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Gives it some dimension. What's it made of?
Described as 2 layers of an enamel-like material. It sounds like it might have a nice depth or richness to it.
Interesting. And colors. I think there were 2 options.
Yep, 2 choices. You've got a matte black dial. This one has white tracks and indices.
And the Lume.
They're using old radium numerals for that faux patina aged look.
Okay, classic combo. And the other one?
Is a beige dial. This one uses black tracks, plus some radium-toned ones as well, and also the old radium numerals.
Beige dial. Nice. How about the hands on each?
For the black dial, you get white hands, including the subdial hands. The main hour and minute hands have lume.
Okay.
On the beige dial, they went with black hands, for contrast, obviously.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And both keep that Bi-Compax layout, right? Subdials at 3 and 9.
Absolutely. 3 o'clock is the 30-minute counter for the chronograph. 9 o'clock is your running seconds. Standard chrono stuff.
And the article mentioned the text on the dial.
Yeah.
The branding.
Yeah, it points out the old school typography and the Eska signature. It says they really help nail that period look, and apparently they're quite close to the original designs.
That kind of faithfulness really matters for a heritage piece.
Totally.
Okay, so what's driving this? What movement did they go with?
Right, the engine. The source says it's the Joux-Perret L113, and it's hand-wound.
Ugh. Joux-Perret. That's a solid choice. Known for quality movements. What are the specs on this L113?
It's a modern column wheel chronograph caliber, which
Right.
is, something enthusiasts often appreciate for the pusher feel.
A smoother action, generally.
Yeah. It beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour. That's 4 hertz. Pretty standard modern frequency. And it gives you a good 60-hour power reserve.
60 hours is decent for a hand winder. Less winding if you wear it a couple of days running.
Exactly. And the article notes its architecture is based on the Valjoux 7750.
Oh, interesting. But the 7750 is usually automatic and cam actuated.
Right. So this L113 is a significantly different execution hand-wound column wheel. But based on that robust base architecture, it also has a stop seconds or hacking function.
Useful for setting the time precisely. And you mentioned a display back so you can see this movement.
You can, and the article says the finishing is nice. You get Geneva stripes, perlage, polished screws. Looks like they put some effort into decorating it.
Good to see. Even if it's based on a known architecture, presentation matters. Now, wasn't there something specific, like a unique detail about the movement for Eska?
Yes, this was a cool little tidbit the brand shared. The column wheel itself, you can see it through the caseback, is steel-colored. And they claim this specific steel color is unique to Eska's version of the L113.
Huh. That's interesting. A small custom touch, but it shows they're not just taking it completely off the shelf. Adds a bit of brand identity right into the mechanics.
Exactly. It's a subtle thing, but it's their specific execution.
All right, so you get the watch head. How does it connect to you? Strap or bracelet?
You get a choice. It comes standard on a leather strap, but there's an optional bracelet.
Tell me about the strap first.
Okay, the strap is described as Cognac Maya full-grain leather. Sounds nice. No buck lining. It's got Eska branding stamped on it. And importantly, quick-release spring bars.
Quick release. Love that. Makes swapping so much easier.
Definitely. And it closes with a standard pin buckle.
Okay. And if you want metal?
There's an optional beads of rice bracelet. Stainless steel?
Beads of rice. Perfect for the vintage look.
Absolutely nails that vibe. It has a butterfly clasp and integrated end link, so it should fit the case nicely.
So, good options there. You can go classic leather or full vintage sport on the bracelet.
Gives you some versatility for sure.
Okay, the practical stuff. Availability, pricing. How does someone get one?
Right. So the plan is for a production of 500 pieces per year.
Okay, limited production.
Seems so. And the first batch, 250 units, they're scheduled to start shipping in late September 2025. So a bit of a wait.
Late September 25. Got it. And how do you order? Is there a pre-order?
Yes, and this is timely. The pre-order window, according to the article, opened June 13th, which is today, and runs until July 12th, 2025.
Okay, so folks listening now are right in that window.
Yeah.
Is there an incentive to pre-order?
There is a tiered pricing structure. During this pre-order period, the price is EUR 1,625. That's excluding VAT.
1625 euro pre-order. And after July 12th.
The standard retail price jumps up to 2,075 euros, also excluding VAT.
Wow, okay, so that's quite a significant difference. Definitely an incentive to decide within the next month.
Absolutely. Makes that pre-order window pretty important for anyone seriously interested.
Good practical info there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's sort of pull all these threads together. We've gone from the brand's history, its revival,
through the design choices for this heritage chronograph, the case size, the step dial, the colors.
We talked about that interesting visual perception of thickness versus the actual wearability.
Looked at the Joux-Perret movement inside with that unique column wheel detail.
Covered the strap options, the production numbers, and that tiered pricing.
Yeah. What really comes across from the source material is this picture of a brand carefully trying to honor its past. They're taking a specific vintage design language
Like the Bi-Compax layout, the pump pushers, the typography.
and blending it with modern watchmaking. Sapphire crystal, a reliable modern movement with good specs, decent water resistance, nice finishing.
It really feels like they're aiming for that sweet spot. Something that evokes nostalgia but works like a contemporary watch should.
Yeah.
Capturing the spirit without being stuck with maybe the limitations of the original era's tech.
Exactly. It seems like a very deliberate strategy. Build something historically resonant, but make it a solid, well-spec'd product for today.
Right. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on the Eska Heritage Chronograph, drawing on all this info from the article, here's something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. We have Eska, a brand with Swiss roots, now being assembled over in France.
Yeah.
They're making this watch that's deeply inspired by vintage design, using a modern Swiss-made movement from Joux-Perret itself, based on classic architecture, but with Eska's own little custom detail. So what is this whole mix, the geographic shift, the vintage inspiration, the modern but customized mechanics? What does all that tell us about how watchmaking identity, where things are made, and how brands tell their stories? How all of that is kind of shifting and evolving right now in the 21st century.
Definitely gives you something to think about,
Yeah.
looking at the bigger picture of the watch world today.
It does indeed. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Eska Heritage Chronograph.